Welcome back to My Conscious Dad on your hometown station. If you're just joining us, we're talking about proactive and reactive people. Now, when we left, we were talking a little bit about, I'm sorry, what were we talking about?
Reactive people and proactive people. Don't let shiny objects.
I just said it too. I just said it. No, but the question I wanted to ask, this is really, I guess, where I think all of the golden nuggets are going to come from, is how do we teach our kids this habit to be proactive versus reactive? I
love that one. You have to teach them by example, because your kids are watching every move you make, and they're learning probably 90% of what you do and how you show up, and only 10% of what you're saying to them. And I think that parents live in the illusion that if they tell them in a certain way, or if they pound it in their head, that their kids are listening more to what they say rather than what they do. And from my experience, 20 years of working with teens in a high capacity training where kids are opening up and sharing, what the kids are saying is, I learned how to be like this from watching my parents. They're watching very close, very attentively, and they're learning by your example. And I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times, you've read it 1,000 times, and we, as human beings, especially parents, we live in the illusion that they're not. And they are. And so the trick is for you to practice it, for you to master it, and what will happen is your kids will watch you in certain scenarios in your life, and they're learning from that.
Right. I also think that it is important to speak it and say it in your words, so that way they're aware of what it is exactly. They know what it is because you've explained it. Also, too, it gives you an opportunity to correct them, or, okay, let's say, for instance, your son is frustrated at me. So my brother's mad at me, and he's like, gosh, she makes me so mad. Then that gives you an opportunity to step in and say, is she making you mad, or are you letting her make you mad? I don't want to say correct, but you get to go in and ask questions and get them thinking.
Well, I think any conscious parent on that journey starts to realize that the power in raising your kids is in asking questions. When your kids are young, it's good enough for you to just be wiser than them, because you can tell them, hey, no, don't do this. Hey, don't do that. So you course correct, but you're doing it from a controlling parent. But when they start to realize they have their own voice and they can make their own decisions right around 8, 9, 12, 15, then the controlling style parent doesn't work anymore. What it calls for is for parents to learn how to reinvent themselves and adapt into the coaching style parent. And the coaching style parent is more of asking questions. Hey, does that decision, support you and what you say you're up to? Or, hey, I noticed you did this. Is that, give me the reason why you did that. Or do you think that's the best decision for yourself? It's asking questions to let your child do some self-reflection and then let them decide for themselves. That's what's powerful in empowering and inspiring people, especially your kids, is asking a lot of open-ended questions. And I think the conscious parents realize that's the best way to go about getting their kids to think for themselves and come to their own conclusions, that they do have a choice and they can make different decisions for themselves.
All right. So if I'm your kid, which I am, and I come to you and I say, someone's bullying me at school, or people are being rude to me, how do I go about, where do you come from telling me what to do? Not I'm talking about in the sense of being proactive and reactive.
If you came to me and said that there was a situation where somebody was being rude and you got upset, I would probably start with the feel, felt, found. Do you know what feel, felt, found is?
No, I've never heard of that.
Feel, felt, found is, I know how you feel. I've felt the same way. And what I found out is, and then I would tell my personal story about what it was like to either overcome that situation, so that it didn't appear like I was telling you what to do. Feel, felt, found is awesome because it renders the advice neutral, so that you can hear the story and go, never thought about it like that. But if I start to tell you what you should be doing or what I think's best for you, you don't hear it like it's the truth. You don't take the message or the lesson to heart. But if I do a feel, felt, found, and it's about my story, you take that little golden nugget and you kind of put it on the shelf and you keep it there. And as you walk off for the next 7 days, you're kind of stewing on it. You're chewing on it still until you rationalize for yourself, like, hey, I like that one. And then you adopt it for yourself. You own it. When you own it, now it's 100%. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I say it, it's my opinion. If you choose to own it, it's your truth. And so the Feel, Felt, Found works awesome for parents that are giving advice or they want to plant some seeds. Another thing that I would say is that if you came to me responding in a situation where somebody was rude, I would probably open up a possibility that you have a choice to not see them as rude, right? I would probably say that you can also realize that you have a choice to see them in a different way. And then I would throw out scenarios. Could it be possible that you can see them as angry, upset, mad, lost, broken, insecure, unconscious, afraid, or immature? Now, if you can see the possibility of seeing all those different ways, then what happens is now you move to a compassionate place. Like if I was able to get you to see that they might be insecure, they might be lost or broken or hurt or afraid, would you not feel compassionate and feel sorry for that person now?
Yeah.
Now, okay, you're going to start crying on me again. Now, if you start to feel compassionate and feel sorry for them, are you now seeing them as rude?
No.
How are you seeing them?
Well, maybe they're hurting or maybe they've got something going on and I'm seeing them as a human being or seeing them like me.
You're seeing them now you're seeing them as somebody that's struggling. You feel sad for them now. Now when you go to a compassionate place, you're not seeing them as rude anymore. You're seeing them as hurt, lost, dysfunctional. And so what you do is you stay neutral about it. You're now not choosing to interpret it as they were rude. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I love that you brought up being neutral because in that moment when someone's being rude to me or yelling at me, I don't go to a compassionate place because all that stuff isn't running through my head immediately, but deciding to be neutral is, so I don't respond. And that's what I love about being neutral. And I didn't even know that you could be neutral. I just thought we always reacted, but I didn't know about being neutral until a couple of years ago. And I would see my friends get frustrated or be like ready to go and fight. And I'm like, whoa. Like, let's think about this for a second.
Yeah.
And so I'm always the one, which I love that I'm like this, or I love that I practice this, is to not go into reaction at all, is to just be neutral. I don't even have to be proactive yet. Just give me the chance to decide what I'm going to do.
And that's what I love about when I teach people how to be neutral. When I do the scenario on paper and I show them that there's this little section called neutral, and I do a little dotted line. I'm like, this little area neutral, you go right past it. And you go into reaction, into judgment, and you decide in a blink of an eye, good, bad, right, wrong, should or shouldn't. Instead of stopping on neutral, and when I pointed this out to people, they go, oh my God, I didn't know that there was a possibility that I can choose to be neutral first. So let's stop on neutral or pause for a moment, take a deep breath. And then when you start to realize and start practicing how to be more neutral in situations, you're going to start realizing that you have an opportunity to choose and interpret from a multiple world of possibilities to give whatever's happening new meaning. And so in that moment of you not reacting and stopping and pausing on neutral, you can now see that that person could possibly be upset, angry, mad, dysfunctional, right? Hurt, afraid. And then from that place, from neutral, you can shift into being compassionate. And from the compassionate place, from your spirit, you can feel sorry for him and say, poor guy, he must be having a bad day, and then just move on, rather than reacting and letting your ego say, what, are you talking to me? How dare you? And before you know it, you let him press your buttons, and there you go, like the record player spinning around.
Yeah, and the idea of neutral sounds like a great idea, and sounds so easy, but not for me. It was really challenging to go to that place, to not skip over neutral and just react or try to figure out what's going on or fix stuff, whatever. But for me, it took a long time. It still takes a long time. I'm still working on it, but the way I see it is I get 100 chances a day to practice this, to decide to be neutral, or because I'm constantly having to make decisions all day long, and every single time I get to be neutral first, think about it, and then make a decision.
And what you just described right there is what's called conscious. It's just being aware more in the moment that you have choices. That's it. And I've said this before, conscious isn't about being perfect. Conscious is about being aware and being in the moment and realizing that I do have choices and that your choices are powerful. But when you're unconscious and in reactive mode, you only go to one or two choices that are automatic. They're predetermined. And there you go reacting, like pressing the button and then just spinning like a record. Instead of, if you're the jukebox, instead of when somebody presses a button, you go, yeah, are you sure you want to hear that song? Because, you know, you've played that song like 10 times now. Maybe we should play like an upbeat song. All right, yeah, maybe you're right. Okay, cool. I'm going to play this one for you. That would be like the conscious jukebox awakening and realizing that it doesn't have to just automatically spin every time somebody presses your button. Or realizing that when people press your button, that button doesn't send any message to do anything. You can just let people press your buttons all day long and it has no effect. Or you can just shut the jukebox down and say, I'm not playing anymore. I'm not playing your game. I'm not playing the unconscious game. And so when people try to press your buttons, you just smile and say, go try the other jukebox over there because we're not playing this game.
I already got my favorite song going.
We're already playing our own music on KHTS, right?
Okay. Right. We play the best music. Okay, so I have another question. So we went over when someone's being rude to you, right? And that's a little bit, I would say, could go either way anyway. But for this next situation that I'm going to explain, it's kind of hard because, well, I'll go over the situation before I go over it. So if I hear a friend talking bad about me, right? So this is my friend. It's not somebody that I'm just going to react and be rude to or freak out over because they're not being rude to me. I just hear them talking bad about me, or I heard somebody tell me that they've been talking about me. There's a lot of things that naturally I would do, especially when I was younger and in school, would be to ignore them, you know, just stop being friends with them or go talk bad about them too. Like, I don't know why she's saying this when she did this too, or, you know, whatever. If I'm your kid, I'm coming to you with, you know, my best friend's talking about me. What would you say that I should do from a proactive place?
Well, first of all, I would remind you that, you know, whatever their opinions are, whatever their thoughts are, whatever their choices are, has nothing to do with you. And I would constantly remind you that you're beautiful and amazing and powerful and loving and caring, compassionate human being. So it doesn't matter what other people think about you. That doesn't determine who you really are. And so I would just open up some possibilities for you to remember who you really are, and then remember that other people have free will to choose to interpret and give any meaning they want to their relationships. So people can choose to see you however they want. But what I will also tell you is, if other people are giving you the same kind of feedback, you might want to listen to what they're saying, because if enough people are giving you the same feedback, you might be showing up like that in real life in the world. If you have one person or two people that out of 100 or 1,000 are just out in left field and that's just how they see you, then you can say, all right, well, I thank you for sharing your opinion. But if you got, you know, not 7, 8, 9 people out of 10 or 15 that are saying, hey, you're really stubborn, or hey, you want it your way all the time, then maybe you should listen to that and start to go, wow, maybe I am showing up stubborn and controlling. I need to start working on that. But when it comes to letting your friends tag you, you know, it really boils down to, that's their opinion. How arrogant of you to want to change their opinion and want them to only think the way that you want them to think. How arrogant of you to only want them to like you all the time. Not everyone's going to like you. So what? And, you know, you're figuring out who you are and you're discovering who you are, and we make mistakes and deal with it.
Yeah, for me, I think I kind of realized, while you're talking, I kind of realized that I think I sometimes do what they do also. You know, maybe I'll talk about somebody and I don't mean harm. It's just me talking, or it's just me venting or whatever. And I'm not realizing that it really doesn't necessarily have to do with that other person. It's kind of just me. So with that in mind, it's kind of a little bit easier to forgive that person, give them a second chance, because that's a weakness that I also have. So I'm doing it too. So why, I'm not going to get mad at her, because that's very hypocritical of me to want her to be better when I'm not even better. It's I mean, I shouldn't want her to be better anyways.
That's a great point. If you're going to start calling people on things, you got to be, your house has to be cleaned up. You got to be dialed in. You got to be tight. You don't have to be perfect, but you got to be tight. You got to be on your game, because if you're going to start calling others on their stuff, you got to be leading by example too. So you got to be careful when you're calling others on stuff. You could open up possibilities and say, hey, have you noticed this? Have you noticed that? Or do the feel, felt, found. Hey, I know how you feel. I felt the same way before. And what I'm finding out is maybe I shouldn't be talking about people either. Maybe you and I should make a pact that we're going to stop doing that. Maybe our lives will change. Maybe we'll grow from it. There's nothing wrong with, as you're giving advice, owning up to, hey, it's something I need to work on as well. I'm constantly telling some of my own clients, hey, I'm glad this subject is coming up, because I need to learn this for the 10th time or the 100th time or whatever. It's a great learning lesson for me as well.
I think as a teen, especially, as kids, we are not used to taking that kind of responsibility. And that's something that I was never taught, and I doubt very many teens were ever taught to take that kind of responsibility. And I guess what I'm trying to say is our parents and teachers are always responsible for us, that we don't really get very many opportunities to take responsibility for things. So, for instance, if I need to use the restroom, my teacher is responsible for giving me the permission to use the restroom. Does that make sense? And then now I'm 18 years old and I'm an adult, and I have to make all kinds of decisions when last year, senior year, I couldn't even go to the bathroom without asking permission. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's why I love schools like SCVI Charter that is, changing their curriculum about the way they teach. Instead of having answers for the kids as facilitators, the kids ask certain questions. A lot of times the facilitators will say, well, what do you think? Or what do you want to do? They're opening up now a whole new culture for kids to start thinking for themselves, so we can develop critical thinking leaders in the world rather than followers. I feel like the school systems right now across the country have been, like an organization and like a company for so long that what it's teaching is that you're the student and you're following my lead. But what if we created a whole new system where we're teaching kids how to think for themselves? We're empowering them to be critical thinkers and making decisions for themselves and taking responsibility for their life. And that's what I love about this school, SCVI Charter, up here in Castaic. And we got a partnership, and when I found out that they existed, it was like, man, this is part of my vision 20 years ago when I decided that I was going to live a purpose-driven life, and I was going to help empower people to get back in the driver's seat in their own life and be the undisputed author of their own lives. This school popped up, and it was like, man, this is exactly what I visioned in my early 20s, was to create the schools to get these kids, to empower them to start thinking for themselves and taking responsibility.
That's really great, because there's nothing more frustrating than the feeling I felt coming out of high school, and all of a sudden I had all kinds of responsibilities with school and going to college and everything and living on my own, because I don't want to say they babied me, but maybe I didn't. Be careful,
because that could be a victim statement.
I'm trying to be careful with my words. I didn't go ahead and take that initiative and that responsibility because I wasn't taught it. Therefore, it's almost like I didn't know. I mean, I did know, and I did have the opportunity to know, but I didn't take advantage of it because it wasn't right there in front of me. Whereas you're saying at SCVI Charter, they're making you take responsibility, or they're giving you the option to take responsibility and be ready for the real world at a younger age.
And I was still in my journey of waking up myself and realizing how to be the undisputed author of my own life. And so, I take some responsibility in that, and I didn't go out and look for these kinds of schools when you were coming up to put you in that kind of environment where it fosters, growth and leadership and thinking for yourself. So I'm part in that too, because I'm responsible for you when you're a kid. I'm making your choices and your decisions, and I put you into that same school system the same way that I was put into it unconsciously. But that's why I'm so excited now to be having the knowledge and the wisdom that I have now. to be a grandfather. I can't wait to help you raise your kids and give them those little golden nuggets to remind them that they're powerful and amazing and confident, and that they're a leader and they can think for themselves. And so I feel sorry for you, because you're going to have these powerful little kids that are going to be challenging you, and you're going to have to really, no, seriously, you're going to have to challenge your own parenting skills, because I'm going to be on their team having them grow some wings and realize that they could fly, that they're the young little eagles that they believe themselves to be. And it's going to challenge your ability of what you think parenting is really about. It's going to force you to reinvent yourself as a parent. So I feel sorry for you and your brother and sister, because I'm going to be on their team to inspire them to be as great as they can be.
Yeah, I'm definitely very grateful to have this opportunity. Like you said, even just having outside sources other than myself to influence my kids is going to be really great. You know, having you, or putting them in schools like SCVI charter, where they get the opportunity to grow and develop. I mean, okay, like my little sister, I'm so jealous of her. She got the opportunity to go to SCVI charter her last year in high school. She graduated from there, and the transition from her a year before that is it's black and white. It's so different. She's a lot more responsible and enlightened, and just so much more, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Open. That exactly. She's a lot different, and I never really would have believed in a school like SCVI charter, to be honest, until I saw it.
Well, neither did she, and she struggled a lot, and we kind of fought a little bit with, seeing that she was greater than she thought she was, but it was hard for her it was challenging for her to see that, because she grew up immersed in the school system, and it was a challenge for her. Everything that's great is gonna force you to really challenge your belief system.
It's definitely very different. Stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. And welcome back to My Conscious Dad on your hometown station. If you're just joining us, we were talking about the proactive and the reactive. Now we're going to go over a quick recap.
We talked about being a proactive father versus a reactive father.
We talked about being the cause or the effect.
Pressing the button, being the jukebox.
Allowing what's happening to happen.
When chaos is around, are you calm?
We talked about reactive people sitting in their emotions and making their problems worse.
Taking situations personal.
Not getting stuck and focusing on something positive.
A victim mode.
Our words have value.
The language you use reflects how you think.
Our kids learn by example.
Teaching kids to be proactive.
We talked about how to be neutral.
Feel, felt, found.
We talked about old school teachings and new school teachings of SCVI charter.
And we talked about nothing being wrong with owning your own faults, like owning up to whatever it is that you need to work on. Being conscious isn't about being perfect, it's about being aware.
I was just going to say, I think it's the beginning of this work is to be conscious or self-awareness.
Yeah,
right?
Self-aware.
And it's crazy to me to think that there's millions of people out there who aren't self-aware, and therefore don't have the opportunity, because they're not open to it, but they don't have the opportunity to get all these other golden nuggets that come after being self-aware.
This is what's even crazier. Most people think they are self-aware because they're thinking from the mind. So they have a good mind, they have a solid mind, they're looking at the results, things are going great for them. So they think that thinking in their mind is self-aware. Self-awareness is a whole different level, and you'll know when you're there because you're there and you're crystal clear and there's results that are happening. Let's talk about the next show. I'm excited about this one.
Me too. Next week, we're going to be talking about why being an affectionate father is important.
Yeah, I feel like there was definitely some barriers being broke in my journey of learning how to be affectionate. I wasn't raised in a family that was very affectionate, so it really forced me to reinvent myself, to challenge some of my fears, to bring some of my walls down, allow myself to be vulnerable, to create a new relationship with crying or showing emotions. I had to challenge some fears, and I feel that by me having that kind of breakthrough and being affectionate is what hooked my heart to my kids and my wife, and really opened up a whole new world for me to being a very powerful and effective father. I'm
excited because we're going to be talking about vulnerability, and I guess lately I've been kind of going over why vulnerability is even important and trying to explain to people why it's important, why I look for that in, relationships or in friendships. And I can't really grasp or get anyone to understand why. And so I'm kind of excited because with affection comes vulnerability.
Yeah, you have to be willing. Excited. You have to be willing to open yourself up, bring your wall down, and you got to have a little bit of courage and trust that when you are like that it's powerful. The very first time I realized that vulnerability was powerful was when I gave myself permission to be vulnerable, and people came up to me and gave me some feedback that just blew me away, and it opened up a whole new world for me to realize that when I allow myself to be real, when I let my real feelings show, when I'm courageous enough to let whatever's coming up for me happen right there in the moment and not care about what people think about me, or not let the ego get in the way and say, no, don't do that because the last time you did that, you got hurt, or don't do that because you're going to show a sign of weakness. I had to really challenge some of those limiting beliefs that, I had to be strong, or I had to challenge the machoism. I had to challenge all that stuff and allow myself to be authentic and experiencing my experience. And if I felt sad, feel the sadness and trust that people around you will take that to heart, and that they'll appreciate it, and that you'll set a precedence for other people to be vulnerable with you and create some deep, meaningful relationships. How does that sound?
That sounds great. I can't wait to talk about it next week. Thank you for joining us today on My Conscious Dad with me, Jazmine Urbina, and my dad, Alex Urbina. We're here every Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.